So, as you can see, Geraldo, my job is to make equipment, to make tools for mounting parts onto cars.
I saw that and I liked it. It's a gratifying job.
It's satisfying, I like it. Of course, because there is still some research involved. For example, when a worker can't staple a part onto a car or all that, then he calls me and I analyze the problem, and in order to make a tool that will help him. That's what tools are made for, because we can't put everything together by hand.
How much does a Peugeot worker earn today?
Well, all that depends on the work you do, right? On your qualifications. My salary is a little less than 2,000 euros a month today.
Over here at Ford, it's about $650. In the United States, the Ford worker makes $22 per hour, which means $5,200 each month.
And you, Geraldo, wouldn't you be interested in working for Peugeot in Rio?
No way, I'd rather sell bananas on the street.
Hello. So I'm going to introduce myself, Jean-François Kondratyuk. I have been a Peugeot Citroën Automobiles employee in Poissy for the past 33 years. I am the secretary of the Force Ouvrières de Peugeot Poissy Workers' Union, which is the major union in Poissy. Ever since I started working, I've been a metal worker. With European committees, we are able to obtain many things. Now I think that the second phase is when the global committees will enable us to improve the lot of Brazilian, Argentinian, etc. workers who work for our group. Peugeot employees in Brazil need to be able to benefit from the same advantages we have in France. And I think this will happen through global committees.
If we created a global committee, it would be the best thing that could happen to us, because with the same wages, there will no longer be any differences. Here in São Paulo, a worker is paid 1,000 or 900 reais, and in Bahia, he's only paid 450 reais. Then these inequalities would disappear.
The government of Brazil's previous president, Fernando Henrique Cardoso, faced many demonstrations against its economic policies. Geraldo took part in the rallies. At the time, he met with the man who was to become his future president.
It is almost impossible to pay back our debt. 60% of the Brazilian budget is used to pay interest on internal and external debt.
Geraldo's future as a car worker is linked to the global money markets. What happens to the stock exchange in São Paulo is affected by the money markets around the world. It's those markets that affect and shape what the multinational corporations like Ford do. And global issues that affect the markets also affect Geraldo.
Luiz Esposito. I've been working here at the stock exchange for almost 40 years. When the Tokyo Stock Exchange loses 8 or 10%, ours changes immediately by reflex. And the worker who has been fired will also feel this. But on the other hand, when those multinational corporations came here for business, they also came because of globalization. They could have set up factories in other countries. They chose Brazil because of the labor, the expansive territory, the political stability, the peace ever present in our country. These factories could have been created in other countries, as was the case in Mexico or Argentina. And this globalization that brought these factories here will also benefit Geraldo.
Brazil's external debt amounts to more than $260 billion. It's a massive sum that Geraldo is convinced will never be paid back. Nor is it easy to grasp the relationship between his country and the International Monetary Fund. So he questioned Nobel Prize winner and former Vice President of the World Bank, Joseph Stiglitz.
The question of whether Brazil can pay its debt, unfortunately, turns out, to a large extent, to depend on factors that are outside of Brazil's control. If the international markets decide that they like emerging markets, if they feel confident in Brazil, all these factors would mean that the Brazilian economy would be strong, and it would be easy for Brazil to pay its debt. But if the opposite happens, then no matter what Brazil does, it will have a hard time. One hears the stories from outside critics that say if countries only did the right thing, things would be okay. That's wrong, because even with the best of policies, you can find yourself hostage to the fickle international markets.
For everything, even to fight against speculation, we are forced to borrow money from the outside. That's how the country and its leaders gave in to the IMF. That's the real truth. And as soon as the IMF comes and looks at your bills, you lose control of your country.
My own feeling is the responsibility of the Brazilian government is first and foremost to the Brazilian people and not to the international creditors. Globalization has brought enormous benefits to many of the countries of East Asia. Their growth was based on exports. But these countries managed the globalization process on their own terms. So they didn't immediately open up their borders to goods to flood in. They did it gradually. They didn't maintain high interest rates. They had a focus on job creation.